Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I'm going to give you 10 tips for applying for graduate school in business administration. If you don't know, I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And these 10 tips are really things that I wish I would have known back in the day. So this was back in 2005 when I applied for my PhD program. And sort of 10 tips that I wish I would have known during that time. So I wanted to help you out as much as possible by sort of telling you these tips that I've learned over the years and what I actually tell my own students in sort of navigating these particular issues. So this is whether you actually want to go into get an MBA, for example, or a PhD in business administration. These are really equally all that important. So the first thing that I wish would have done a little bit more is study for the GMAT. I think I studied for about 3 weeks to 4 weeks for it, which wasn't long enough. And the other thing that I wish I would have done is actually take the GMAT course and take several of the GMAT courses. They're relatively inexpensive for what you're going to gain from that in terms of the potential and the potential for scholarships, for example, the potential for going to higher level programs and all that kind of stuff. That's an important thing to consider when you're going for it. It's probably one of the biggest things to consider. That's what it is, a strong signal. As much as different programs are going to tell you that they don't use the GMAT score, the GRE score, they do use it, and it's a pretty strong signal of where you're going to be placed. So really do invest in that. That's going to be a really important thing going forward. The second thing is make sure that your statement of interest is really focused on the interest of the institution that you're applying for, right? So look at what other people are doing at that particular school. It's going to really help you out for sort of applying to different institutions, whether you want to do an MBA or a PhD. Is just look to see at what other people are doing and try to be attractive to those particular people, right? And when you're doing that, you're going to decide whether that actually is an appropriate program for you and it's going to make sense for what you're interested in. Because if you are trying to be attractive to somebody else somehow, right, by tailoring what they're interested in, you're going to realize that maybe this is not going to be really what I want to do going forward. So that's going to really help for you because it's going to identify whether your own interests overlap with the interests of the other institution or the people that are at the institution. That's an important thing to think about, right? Does it make sense, right? If they have a social entrepreneurship program and you're not really all into social entrepreneurship, why apply there, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily make sense. If it's a really strong finance program and you're not interested in finance, well, then don't go there, right? Like, don't even think about going there. It doesn't make sense. The third thing, and this is one that most students sort of forget about, including myself and almost everybody, but I force students to do this now, and it's a very, very good exercise. Create an Excel spreadsheet where you rank order the costs and benefits of each program. So create, in the rows, create the different programs that you're thinking of applying for, and actually write down the cost. How much is actually going to cost you to do that particular program? And then the benefit, whether it's sort of financial benefit, how much do you stand to gain? For that, you're going to actually, and this is going to be a tip in a few minutes, you're going to have to get some numbers from the other program, from the different programs, and what is actually going to happen to you, right? What's the salaries that you're going to get, and find out all this information before you even attend the program, right? And just have a list of, does this make sense? And you could kind of rank order a little bit better because you have clear information what you're going to do going forward. The fourth thing that I think is very important, and it helped me out a lot, and hopefully it's going to help you out a lot, is avoid student debt as much as you possibly can. So there are ways that you can actually navigate and go to different programs based on student debt or not getting a lot of student debt. Unless you have to, you can fund your MBA and PhD in many different ways, getting scholarships, for example, going and maybe talking to different industry people. There's different ways that you can do this. Maybe your current employer will pay for an MBA, for example. Look for things like that. That's going to benefit you a whole lot, because then it's not going to sort of dictate, once you get that debt, it changes your mindset and where you're going to go going forward. And that's a really important thing. You're going to be much more in the mindset of losses and sort of recouping those losses than thinking about the potential gains that you can get going forward. And there's a whole psychology on that. You can watch a couple of my videos where I actually talk about that, but that's an important thing to think about. The fifth thing I think is important is look for specialist programs of your interest. So now this is becoming a little bit more of um, a hotter thing in any particular program in business administration, is that there's specialist sort of degrees that you can get in entrepreneurship and innovation and healthcare. Look for those ones, but then you also want to end up with just an MBA at the end of it. So you can actually get those specialties in those particular areas, but you want to look for MBAs that you'll just end up with an MBA, because you want to be somewhat generalist. In case you change your mind, you go into those specialist programs, you take a couple of courses and you realize you don't like it, then you have options. Having options is really important. So you want to make sure that your program that you're going to is generic, right? That it's just an MBA. But it gives you sort of specialty to go into different areas, like healthcare, for example. So when you go into the program and you realize you don't like it, you can do something else. That's a really good thing going forward. You don't want to go into a specific master's that doesn't give you, or a specific PhD that doesn't give you a lot of options going forward. That's what you should be always, your mindset should be thinking about the potential options that it's going to be giving you going forward. The sixth thing that I think is very, very important, and I mentioned this earlier, is get statistics on all of this kind of information, right? Look to see how many people actually graduate. Record that in a spreadsheet. Look to see how many jobs people are getting and how many offers they're getting. Record that in a spreadsheet. Look to see what their salaries are going to be. Look to see, where they're going, where they're placing. That's all important stuff. Record that in a spreadsheet. That's going to help you going forward tremendously, because it's going to help you avoid making mistakes going forward, and it's going to help you rationally think through these things. It's very hard to think rationally unless you list this stuff out in a very systematic way and you get that information. Go get that information. Contact the different administration offices and get that information. You can do it. The information is out there. You just have to look for it, right? Now, the seventh thing that I think is important that I wish I would have known is just look broadly, or look more broadly than you are thinking, right? So you can apply to the particular state and look at the different state schools, or you can apply within a country. You can also apply to all sorts of programs all around the world that are really good, and they do give you options. As long as you're looking for ones that are really legitimate, they're going to give you a lot of options going forward, and it may give you, maybe you're going to get an offer someplace else that you can take, and that's going to be a lot better than the offers you're going to get if you just apply within a localized area. And that's a lot of times that happens, believe it or not. There's really great programs out there, like INSEAD, or in Singapore. Australia has good programs. India has actually some very good MBA programs right now, of all things, that you might want to consider, right? Like, those are really cool and interesting things that you could do going forward. Another thing to think about, so the eighth thing to think about, is that the lowest cost alternative or the highest cost alternative might not be the best choice for you. That's an important thing to think about, particularly in America. There's a lot of high cost alternatives that don't necessarily have the credibility or the reputation that they should, warranting the cost. And it happens in all countries, but that definitely happens there. There is also, if you're thinking about the lowest cost alternative, sometimes just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's the place to go. So consider looking at alternatives that fit you and rank order the ones based on the benefit, not only on the cost. So that's important. Don't just look at the cost, look at the benefit you're going to get from each program. That's going to be really important going forward, and looking for the one that gives you the maximum amount of benefit at the least amount of cost. That's just thinking rationally. That's all I want you to think about going forward. And another thing to think about is look several years in advance. So number 9 is to look several years in advance, and sort of plan how you're going to get into that program several years from now. So if you don't get in this year, that doesn't matter. It's not a big thing. You can keep applying and look for a program that's going to get you, that you're going to get into that program. And you can tailor what you're doing, just like what some people do in med school, for example. They start volunteering, they start doing different, doing different tests and, maybe bumping up in different courses and things like that, getting better at different courses. But you're looking for is building your career to get into the program you want to get into, right? So you have a career trajectory that things look good, and that's going to help you going forward. If you want to get a PhD, for example, well, go start doing some research. Do some research for somebody for free, or maybe a little bit on the side, whatever it is, so you can show that you've actually done this, and that people are not going to be scared of bringing you on board because you're very inexperienced. And that's really what people are looking for, is things like that, some signals that you're actually trying. And the last thing, I think number 10, and this is going to save you a tremendous amount of agony going forward, and it's going to really help for you, is to think about 25 years from now. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do going forward? Once you figure out what you want to be and what you want to do 25 years from now, work backwards. Think about the different systematic steps to actually get there and plan it out, right? It doesn't, I mean, the dates and all that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily have to be all that important, but if you want to be a CEO, well, think about, well, what do CEOs have to do? If you want to be a CEO at a consulting company, what did they do to get there? What is it that they did to actually get to that point? If you want to become, a full professor someplace, or some very renowned person, a judge or whatever it is, look to see where they are. Try to figure out how to actually get there, working your way backwards. And that's going to give you a much better idea on how to actually, what to do and where to apply, and sort of the steps to do to actually get to that moment 25 years from now that your life is altogether what you thought it was going to be. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a really mishmash and all that. But basically what you're trying to do is plan, giving yourself contingencies and what to do going forward, that in 25 years that you're going to be a little bit closer to what you thought would be actually a good thing going forward. So those are my 10 tips for applying to graduate school in business administration. Hopefully you like them. Do subscribe to this channel and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. All right, take care. Bye.